Thanks for staying with us. The City of Johannesburg is clarifying the future of over 100 employees. The staff members received notices informing them of a decision to rescind their permanent employment following a council meeting. The city's mayor, Dr. Mpho Phalatse, insists the move to convert fixed-term employment contracts to permanent positions was unlawful.
Nobody's being fired. There was an unlawful appointment. We can't fire you if you were appointed unlawfully. Your appointment is null and void. It was never supposed to happen. So nobody's been fired. We're regularizing an unlawful appointment.
This was Phalatse and the city's stance on Wednesday. But on Thursday, the city did an about turn. It says the office issued affected employees with notices to start a consultative process.
I'm receiving complaints by senior managers in the entities, in the departments, that political staff gets forced onto them who more often than not are unqualified for the roles that they're supposed to be absorbed into. This waters down the quality of service that we're able to render to our residents. Anybody that applies for a position needs to apply and compete for that position fairly. They need to demonstrate ability to deliver on the mandate of that position and not just be taken from political office into permanent positions as some favor to some politicians.
The contracts of employees in so-called political positions were converted in October last year.
There's no termination letter on the table. What we have on the table is a notice to notify the employees that there were irregularities in your conversion. And in that notice, we then invite them to make representations as to how we should regularize.
Notices were hand-delivered to their homes by JMPD security personnel. The city said this was due to the urgency of the issue. Mpho Phalatse, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, let's get more details on this particular story. Let's speak now to Councillor Leah Knott. She is the MMC for Corporate and Shared Services in the City of Johannesburg. MMC, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Very briefly, what jobs do these employees do, for example?
So in essence, they are political appointments. They work within the political caucus offices, which are ascribed to various political parties based on their seat allocation. So the DA would have an office, Action SA, for example, should have an office, but cannot because they can't capacitate it, and etc. They work in the Speaker's office, his direct political support, the members of the mayoral committee, the private office of the executive mayor, the chair of chairs, and the whips and deputy whips within the city.
So I'm keen to find out, because for the city to get to this point of saying that these contracts are irregular, you must have established some kind of facts at face value. Who approved these conversions?
So in essence, we were actually complaining about this conversion back in March 2021 as the official opposition within Johannesburg, because we weren't consulted as a political party for one. We found out through our staff that they had been contacted in our caucus office to come and sign conversion letters. It got to the point where eventually they were threatened with termination if they didn't sign the conversion letter. We asked for consultation from the then Mayor, Jeff Makubu, and from the MMC at the time, Councillor Masuku, and we were ignored. We asked them as to why, the previous almost 200 employees on fixed-term contracts from that administration under Councillor, at the time, the Mayor Herman Mashaba, were let go. More staff were then hired under fixed-term contract, basis, but then converted into permanent both in March 2021 and in October 2021. And what's interesting in October is that conversion happened in contradiction to a directive that came through that said the intention of political office is actually to fix it to the administrative term and have a 30-day exit clause.
All right.
And that was ignored. They went ahead with the second conversion. So we have been fighting this for quite some time, and we've been collecting evidence based on it.
I'll get to that in just a moment. I'll get to those efforts that you spoke about in just a moment. I'm very keen to find out, though, back to the question I asked. There must have been a paper trail here you must have been able to establish where it all came from, because if HR, for example, calls a person to come and sign a contract, the mandate comes from somewhere. Who initiated this conversation? What does the paper trail say?
So it was initiated in the mayoral committee at the time. That's where the decision happened. They claimed that they had delegated powers from council that gave the mayor the power to make this conversion. We disputed that, and we have legal opinion to this effect that states that this function lies directly with the municipal manager. And so in essence, it was done in the mayoral committee. It wasn't brought to council. The political parties weren't informed, and neither were the residents.
So is it the municipal manager's signature on the mandate?
Actually, strangely enough, on the second conversion report, it's the chief of staff in the mayor's office, which is irregular in itself, because the chief of staff does not bring reports to a mayoral committee nor to council. And it's the signature of various legal advisors that formulate pull the other reports, and the previous city manager.
I'll tell you why I'm asking this. Before we get into the actual employees and the contracts themselves, it doesn't sound like you are also, as the city, going after this particular individual who took this particular decision, but in fact you are going after the employees who were given contracts to sign. Are you going after this particular chief of staff, and are they having a case opened against them now?
So what council did last week was they took a decision to rescind the mayoral committee decision based on the fact that it was an unlawful decision. The process in itself should never have happened. And part of that resolution of that report was for the administration under the city manager, or the acting city manager now, to do an investigation and bring a report back to council within 30 days to understand how this process unfolded and how it was allowed to happen. The staff themselves are not under any sort of targeting or however it wants to be put, but they are unfortunately the beneficiaries of an unlawful process, and the process itself is what council has requested be investigated now.
I'll tell you why I say that it appears as if the staff is being targeted. It's also because there isn't much talk about these particular signatories who made this possible, because the staff themselves, unfortunately, were not the ones who initiated the contracts from them to benefit. Now, we would like to hear if there's also a going after of the previous administration, but I'd like us to also talk about the council, because you alluded to this. You say it started in March 2021. In October, it also went on. I was listening to what you said in the briefing in the morning. You spoke about the letters that you've written, and you were not getting a response when it comes to really raising the alarm when it comes to this particular process, and the administration was not cooperating with the official opposition. Should you not have either made too much of a noise or gone to court or even put it before council in order to ensure that we don't find ourselves at this point where you've got 130 people who are now standing with uncertain futures?
Well, I think you must remember, as I said before, these are political appointments. You had 200 people that had uncertain futures when the administration changed in 2019. It is a risk you take on when you apply for a fixed-term contract, which these individuals did. And anybody applying to a political office understands that you are tied to the administration of that time.
True.
So we can argue conflicting rights here. We can argue that the beneficiaries of this process should have been the people that they found in those offices when they took control of government. Or we can argue that the current beneficiaries are the correct ones. But the bottom line is, you cannot be a beneficiary of an unlawful process. And
Councillor Knott, pardon me, I have to come in there. I'm asking a question about the fact that you say that you've been writing letters. I was listening to you say you've been writing letters, you're not getting a response as the official opposition. Here's an illegal process, a process that is not supposed to be happening is unfolding. Do you not make a louder noise and bring this into council in order to make sure that council exercises its oversight role and stops these particular illegal conversions? Should the noise from your side not have been louder?
No, I heard you. Sorry, as I responded with the end of your question, I was getting there. But to explain that, how the process started, we approached attorneys. We served them with legal letters in that respect. Understand litigation costs a lot of money, and we also do not have access to city funds to fight that litigation. We did make a lot of noise about it at the time. And when the national directive came through sort of just after mid-year last year. We figured now National has now come and clarified, because they've realized that there is an abuse of this process. And they clarified in their circular, which has been promulgated and will come into effect mid-2022, that political officers are tied to an administrative term.
True.
It was at the same time that this happened that they then started the second conversion process, and this was just before the election. It happened on the eve of the sort of 1st of November election. And at this stage, we were then in a position to properly investigate and get the documentation that was required. And we've been working on this since November up until this date. It hasn't been something we came up with yesterday. We've been looking at the files, the records. We were able then to get access to the in-committee mayoral recordings, which are actually a public right. If you go to the Speaker's office, you as a member of the public can ask for recordings of council or documentation. We were stopped at every possible avenue. And we were basically, we had to find innovative ways of getting this information. Some of it we sourced during the time we were in opposition. It's been a long road in getting all of this together.
All right.
But I do feel that we have done everything, and we did do everything that we could at the time. It's not such a long time that's elapsed since then.
Okay.
But we are in a position now.
Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. I'll leave that point there for now, but I still think that council could have done more here. But let's move on then to the point where we are also hearing that there were JMPD officers that were sent, and the acting municipal manager saying earlier on that they were dressed in civilian clothing and they needed to make sure that they hand over these letters to these individuals. Was it necessary to get the JMPD officers involved? Because we're hearing that some of them delivered the letters as late as 10 p.m. at night, armed, causing further trauma to some of those that they were going to.
Yeah. Look, I wasn't present at the handover of these letters, but understand that JMPD is divided into different directorates. It wasn't JMPD officers that were deployed to deliver these letters. They are highly confidential letters. Employees were requested to collect them and to receive them. In some cases, they did not. And it's important that they be given the opportunity to receive them and respond in time. So the security section of JMPD, which is basically just security, they went and delivered these letters to the affected individuals. I have not had any reports. I've heard sort of claims by other political party that they were intimidating, but there have been no formal claims of such. I know some of the staff that were affected in our political offices received them, and they said they were delivered, you know, in a normal manner, and they received them.
Does it not concern you, though, that if there are concerns of intimidation, you as the city should have acted against some of these officers? And I'll tell you why. The reason I ask you this is because you say that some of them were threatened in order to sign these contracts that they didn't want to sign for these conversions. So would you want to then inflict further trauma if this is now what you are now putting JMPD officers to employees? Are you not further inducing the trauma that they may have had to endure if they were forced to sign these contracts in the first place?
No, I think you're misunderstanding me. If the employees who were threatened with termination, if they didn't sign the conversion, were our employees in March 2021. And that is what happened then. This is not the scenario now. I cannot act on a rumor that somebody has been intimidated. I can also say,
but we do know from the municipal manager this morning saying that the JMPD officers had to go there. He confirmed it. He said it. They were dressed in plain clothing.
Branch,
Was that a necessary move? And what necessitated that? Were these employees hostile towards the city, or was it another act of intimidation? I'm trying to understand the logic of JMPD officers delivering these letters and not city officials.
I'm going to say it again. There's a difference between a JMPD officer and a branch of security that falls under public safety. The council took a decision. The city manager then took over the process. These letters were delivered to them by the security branch of public safety because of the confidential nature and in order to ensure that they were received by them. If we receive a complaint, an official complaint of any intimidation, it will be dealt with as such. But we are trying to make out like there was intimidation when there is no evidence of such. And I cannot respond to something that is not evident, nor can I confirm that it actually happened, because as far as I'm concerned, the officials or the employees that received these letters that I've spoken to have stated that no such intimidation existed. So we're almost talking about a hypothetical situation that we're trying to respond to. The bottom line is we are dealing with pure and simple cadre deployments in the city of Johannesburg that is costing the residents of Johannesburg 80 million rand. And the solution to that by the previous administration was to put them into an excess pool where they can sit and earn money and not do anything, and then we have to hire more political staff at an extra cost of another 80 to 100 million.
All right, Councillor Knott, pardon me, sorry, we're out of time, but I do think we do agree on the fact that political appointments are attached to a political office. It's a process here that I'm really just trying to get at, because I really almost feel like council could have made a louder noise about this. I also almost feel like there's quite a lot that could have been done differently where this process is concerned, to try and enlighten us as members of the public as to exactly what's going on here. But let's continue to watch these developments closely and see if you'll be able to wrap up this process and speak again in future as we try then to get a sense of what is to unfold in the future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, that was Councillor Leah Knott, MMC for Corporate and Shared Services in the City of Johannesburg. Let's take a quick look